Thank you for emphasizing the importance of history and continuity, because so much about leadership is about breaking from the past. But you've illustrated through your own career and your philosophy the power of history, the power of ideas as a currency, central currency of leadership, and understanding that broader political context. In particular, the 5 principles that you laid out for the portrait gallery and the power of reminding and then being embedded in the design of the portrait gallery has obviously borne fruit. But the phrase that caught my attention more than any, and maybe it's to do with the surfing metaphor and Raglan not being that far away, but is this notion of catching a wave and how it is important to be able to sense and catch and ride that particular wave. So thank you, Andrea. I'm now going to call upon Michael Houlihan to respond to Andrew's remarks. And if you look at the careers, there's actually some very interesting parallels and trajectory. I'm not going to speculate on who's been in the business longer, but as you know, Michael became CEO of Te Papa Tongarewa in 2010. But he started out in a very similar way to Andrew as a research assistant with the Imperial War Museum in the early 80s. He joined the Horniman Museum, which is a very formative period in terms of his leadership. It's located in the deepest south of suburban London in 1984. And then in 1998 was appointed the first chief executive of the newly created National Museums and Galleries of Northern Ireland. There's obviously a very strong emphasis on place and region in terms of the work that you've done, Michael. In 2003, he became Director General of Amgueddfa Eddfach Cymru, which is the National Museum of Wales, and was most recently Chairman of ICOM UK. So please, could you welcome Michael to respond to the remarks that Andrew has made. Thank you, Michael.
Aotearoa. The last time I was a respondent, I was in the High Court in Belfast, so I'm not really sure what I've got to do here. In terms of responding, we were talking last night about this, and we said it'd be great to have a cat fight. So, so I'm going to give it a try. I'm not going to mention directors. In fact, if this was about leadership, we'd actually have a member of the Te Papa team up here responding to Andrew. Because, in a sense, I'm going to argue that there is no such thing as leadership. That leadership, certainly for my generation, is anti-democratic. Quite often you associate it with Genghis Khan, Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, great leaders in their own way. But do you want to go there? So what I thought I might do is take all those wonderful leadership theories, trait theory, situational theory, transformational, transfiguration, all that sort of stuff, and wrap them into something else and try and look at how really museums as institutions should be leaders. So I'm trying to sort of put another position here, which is in response to Andrew, which is that where museums, I think, are potentially a little bit different, is that they have the opportunity in themselves to be leaders, as opposed to emphasizing the leader. And what's really important is not actually leadership, but actually leading. And that can happen on a variety of levels. It can happen, yes, at an individual level, at a governance level, but I think really importantly for museums, it can happen at an institutional level. And this is where we're different. No museum is famous for its accountability or its process. Very few museums are actually famous for their leaders in terms of public perceptions of them. So what I really wanted to do was actually explore, this sort of popped into my mind while you were talking, what would you have instead of leadership? And I think probably what you might have, if I can coin a word, futureship. And what that's about is about a realization of a future that you might not otherwise have had, but fulfills a need either to your institution, to the sector, or to the nation. And the components of that, I think, do sit very well with leadership theory because it's innate. I believe that every institution, and you can go and try this one at home, every institution actually has within it a set of values. Probably most museums have collections these days. Wasn't always the case. They have collections, they have history, and they also have ideas. And again, I think I'd really support what Andrew was saying around the importance of ideas as being a key differentiator for an organisation. I think equally important in all this is, again, Andrew touched on it, is the importance of understanding the environment. The environment is the history of the institution. I'm actually a great believer in the history of institutions as being almost them rather than try to oppose them. There was a great piece of work done in the UK at City University. It was a doctoral thesis on the culture of museums, and it basically looked at the fact that the culture of museums tends not to change from their founding nature. So if an institution was very gossipy or it had informal communication systems 100 years ago, it would still have them today. So that culture runs through. So it's very difficult to resist that, and I think various attempts were made in the 80s by museum directors brought in from outside of the sector, who brought it in, tried to do the sort of Barclays thing, give everybody a cardboard box, get them out the door. It doesn't work. You have to work with the culture of the organisation, and that's part of the environment you work in. Equally, there's the wider environment outside, changing demographics. Andrew touched on technology as being another key area. Understanding that environment and responding to it is absolutely a key link back into those innate qualities that make up your organisation or your museum. I think also allied to that, and I'd like to introduce this, is the importance of learning. We all deliver learning, but we don't often think about what we are learning as institutions, as museums. And I think the day that you stop learning, then your institution becomes moribund, it becomes irrelevant. So keeping that sort of learning at an organisational level happening, both for institutions and I think for individuals, is really important. The other area, again, getting into slightly more sort of nuts and bolts stuff, and I think this came up in Andrew's presentation. I think if we talk too much about directors and too much about leaders, we tend to see decision-making as sitting in that arena. I know I'm quite often the last person to know what's going on in certain aspects of Te Papa. So how can I be taking decisions around it? So recognizing that an institution of itself should have the ability to take decisions and be able to do that is absolutely key. Decision-making ranges from sort of foundation decision-making, which is back to Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot, an individual takes the decision, right the way through sort of 4 or 5 steps down to transfiguration, where you're working in an environment where decision-making is totally rolled out. You don't even need a performance review system. Everyone has that trust, and the system works. Most organisations sit somewhere in between all that, but understanding how decisions are taken, I think, is absolutely key. And it's not about individuals, it's about how the museum takes decisions. So I would actually move it out of the realm of the leader and into the organisation. I think performance, again, understanding performance, for the organisation to understand performance. And a lot of these, what I'm talking about, are organisational behavioural characteristics. A lot of leadership theory, I think, looks at individuals and their leadership style. But I would argue that institutions have a style as well. And that style has got to be really based on looking at performance from the point of view of how you celebrate it, how you refine it, how you improve it, and how you support it. I think those are absolutely vital areas. And really, just to sort of finish off, the other 2 areas that I think organisations need to look at, and I think implicit in all this is that too often we are all embroiled in the day-to-day activities of our work. It's more important to get the door open than to think where we're going. And around that, I think we do need to think about issues, for example, of capability. What are the skills that we need in our organisation, in our museum, to achieve that sort of future that we should really be thinking quite deeply about. Even if you've got no money, and I've worked in that environment, one way of getting out of that is to think about the future and where you're going. And that is absolutely critical, I think. And what skills do you need to do that? And of course, yes, I'll have to say the whole question of capacity around how you do things, the process, getting that right. But it needs to be appropriate. It can't be a big clunky system that's dropped in there. And I think that the way in which museums should look at how they do things should be geared to how they're going to, where they want to go in the future. So I think what we need to recognize is that we are here for communities, that we're here to engage with communities, we're here to impact on communities. And last night, Brad, you were picking up on this whole question of how you almost change people. And I think museums have a great role to play in that area. We don't do it enough. We lack ambition in many respects around that. We are an integral part of society. We actually came out of the social re-engineering stable back in the Victorian period. I think we need to, in a sense, not quite reclaim social engineering, but certainly having a clear impact on society and the issues that matter to society, not the issues that matter to us. So I would actually emphasize futureship, not leadership, but leading. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Obviously, fast has paid off, quite a different context. And we've been listening attentively, and the theme of this keynote was in fact around talk. So I'm going to invite you in around your tables to talk, and talk feverishly for the next 5 minutes. And really what I would like you to do is say, what would be the key point that you would want to underline and emphasize and say that this is central to the work of Museums Aotearoa and the work that you do? Or it could be around which of the points that were made that you would most want to take issue with. And then what we'll do is do a very quick debrief and say what emerged in a selection of the tables. So on the count of 3, can I invite you to engage in frenzied talk and further discussion? Thank you. points that you'd want to emphasise. And I'm going to do some cold calling here, but maybe at the table, this gentleman here is, would someone just like to emphasise or point out the key point that emerged from the discussion there? That's good. We've got a few reluctant leaders there.
I'm leading.
So,
is this on?
Yeah, your name, sir?
I'm Cam McCracken from Dunedin Public Art Gallery.
Great.
Our table had a very disparate, wide-ranging conversation. We started talking about, leadership, which was about monument building.
Yep.
And I think we finished talking about leadership organisations, organisations that were enabling staff on all sorts of levels to identify problems and issues and future directions. And I think personally, we are entering into a time of contraction, and doing more with less is about everybody taking responsibility and stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, and making some hard choices as well. Excellent. Thanks for that summation. That's a model summation. Could I invite the table over there in the corner there? So, anyone would like to step up and provide a summation?
Hi. Elizabeth Caldwell from City Gallery in Wellington. As Cam said, we were free-ranging as well across a number of topics, but in effect, the things that were resonating for us as a group, in summary, were about having a clarity of focus for end results, alignment of action with that focus, and not having gaps between what you were saying you were going to do and then what your institution was actually doing, and not being distracted from that focus, but being confident about what you were doing and not being distracted. I think it was Andrew that talked about the corrosive qualities of your program being pulled in different directions by others' agendas, and having the confidence to be true to that focus for your future.
Confidence to be true to the focus. Thank you. That's a great summation here. The group just heard to you. Do you love that? Would be terrific. Yeah. You going to do a duo?
Well, I'll give it a shot. We had a wide-ranging discussion as well. I think for us, I'm Jared Beckinsale from Pukeariki Museum in New Plymouth. We were intrigued by the notion of the invisibility of leadership in museums, as opposed to other businesses where leadership might be quite visible and based around the character of that leader. And I think we worked around that point. We got to the point where we thought that museums are inherently supposed to be quite neutral these days, and so having a sort of dynamic, personable leader in charge might not be a good thing.
Okay, so essentially, is neutrality an option these days, though? That'll be the question. So, and your point about not having it, not being hung up on a personality cult, so that's great. I understand this group here would like to make a comment.
Yep. Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora.
We talked a number of different points. We really like the idea of futureship, future leadership, and understanding the past and the history of organisation as you move forward into the history. Oh, sorry.
Lovely. Let's hear that full voice.
Sorry. Also that museums and communities should be working together in partnership, and this would be predicated on the fact that museums need to relinquish a sense of authority over those decisions which affect the community, even down to things like curatorial selection and colours on walls and all those types of things. We came up with our own little whakatauki, which is related to understanding the history of an organisation, which is before you mow the grass, you've got to look for the stones. So you've got to really look below that kind of level that is visible to you. You need to really go in there and dig around, and then go in and cut. And the other thing is, one of the problematic things when it comes to museum leadership is the appearance of ego getting in the way, which I suppose is related to the last speaker who said that we have to affect a sense of neutrality, or the appearance of neutrality, which I think doesn't sometimes work. I think it's quite a false facade. But But that doesn't mean that your ego has to become the great flag that you fly. It means that you adopt a position and that the museum backs it, and that the people who work for you back that position as well, and that's what you walk forward with that stance.
That's a marvellous summation. Thank you. That was an amazing 5-minute discussion that you had there. Terrific. Okay. Well done. And we've got time for a couple more tables. Any other table would like to step up and make their observation before I nominate a table? Oh, there's one over there. That's excellent. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chloe from the North Otago Museum in Oamaru, and we started our discussion with something that we felt wasn't raised, which was the issue around gender and leadership, sitting around the table with some lovely women in museums here, and that sort of, started our topic discussion with that, and a sense that there are a lot of women working in museums and doing museum studies, but then when you get to the top, there still seems to be some fantastic female leaders, but a lot of men as well. And then we were having a bit of a chat about Andrew's talk and Michael's talk, and that balance between leaders and leadership and futureship as well.
Fantastic. It is a bit telling given the somewhat homogenous selection of panel here. That will change, I know. Another table, quickly we'd like to jump in. This table here, would you mind? Yeah. Somebody wants to over here. Thank you.
Kia ora, my name's Victoria Essen, and we had a lively discussion around our table. What we discussed was the idea that institutions, in order to be leaders, need to be self-aware. So the idea of evaluating what you do as an institution, and building in the time to allow for that reflection, because without that ability to reflect on what you do and how you do it, you will become disconnected to the communities that you're there to serve. So we discussed the idea of welcoming communities to shape the direction and understanding the resourcing constraints of your organisations, because a number of the organisations sitting around the table are small and do have resourcing constraints, and engaging what issues should be explored and developed within the museums and gallery spaces, so that that idea of engineering from above doesn't occur, because you've involved the community in the discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you. Obviously, we'd like to be able to tap into all the other tables' conversation, but it's fascinating how your talk inspired a very wide diversity of talk. And so I really do want to invite you to convey your appreciation for the wisdom and the provocation that we were given from two leaders of two national museums. So please give a very warm round of appreciation for Andrew Sayers and Michael Houlihan. And yet there's more. We talked about the importance of leadership in governance. We're also going to have a chance briefly now to consider leadership in governance and government. And I'm going to invite Claudia Orange from Te Papa Tongariro to come up just to speak very briefly about a very important issue that you all have a stake in. So Claudia.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Leadership is about ideas and seizing a moment in time. And I'm talking very briefly about the constitutional review. I've got 3 minutes, says Philippa, so I've got to go for it fast. Te Papa's committed to this as part of our Forum for the Future. The review's been slow to get on our public radar, but now I think is the time for us as museum leaders to seize the opportunity to engage our publics in talking and learning, as Mike has mentioned, and in influencing the future. We and you, we have spaces for groups. We could create our own groups as part of the museum world, perhaps make it clear to the community that groups could use some of our meeting spaces. We have facilitating experience. Not that you need to facilitate, it may well be groups coming in will do their own talking and facilitating. We could also hold resources on our information desks. They're not difficult to get. If you look at your pack, you do have a flyer in there. There's a number to ring. It does answer. It's also got lots of online stuff too. There are really big questions. They're actually going to affect all of us. How do we want New Zealand to be run in future? What are the rules by which we would like to see our future children and grandchildren live by? What are the values we treasure and that we don't want to lose or set at risk? There are some very big questions defined. Those topics specifically you'll already know, I think, but just capturing them very quickly. Our Bill of Rights, it only went so far in 1990. Geoffrey Palmer didn't really take it all the way. Matthew Palmer the other night said we really need to be aware that we actually are quite vulnerable in different ways. Treaty of Waitangi, what are we going to do with it? Should it be in a written constitution or out of it? What's going to happen in the post-treaty settlement period? Maori representation and other electoral matters too, term of parliament, size of electorates. One devil of a lot that groups can talk about and learn, because we don't get it in our schools. Even King's College in Auckland admitted to me that although it filters into their lessons, they don't actually have anything formal. Our 15-year-old grandson in the States, on the other hand, had an excellent rundown on the American Constitution and the way politics worked there. So we do fail in this respect, and this is an opportunity. There are a series of debates that Victoria University's law school is running. One should be on the radio, national radio soon. After that, they should, of course, be on the Radio New Zealand website. So really, there's 4 million going into this, which is quite a lot, and there hasn't been much seen of it yet, but I do believe in the next week or two there's going to be more. So don't be a skeptic, she says, because I know a lot of people are skeptical about where this is going to go. It's not perfect, but we do have a unique opportunity. So tune in, get the resources, talk it up, use this unique opportunity for expressing leadership. And I do have a few of the things that I'll put on one of the tables so that you can see what they've got. Some really good stuff, interesting here, and you can get online. They've got a quiz too. I couldn't answer the quiz questions. I suspect most of us can't. We need to learn. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Claudia. Well, phew, a whole morning of a huge amount to think about. It's now lunchtime. Lunch is served in the foyer over through the door in the far corner, and we reconvene here at 1:30. And it's great that we're keeping to time, which is terrific. At 10 to 1, for those who are interested, there'll be a film screening. Sarah Davey of the Film Archive has got a compilation of film which will be shown in the long room next door. There's more information on all those things in your conference program. At 1:30 there are some choices. In here there's a community cafe which can accommodate up to 60 or so people. So if that's looking too full, you won't be able to stay. In the long room we're talking about new stuff. And in the corner, the curators of tertiary collections are going to have their meeting. So enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you again at 1:30.